Chapter 7. The Journey to the Great Oz. They were obliged to camp that night under a large tree in the forest, for there were no other houses near. The tree made good, thick covering to protect them from the dew, and the Tin Woodman chopped a great pile of wood with his axe, and Dorothy built a splendid fire. That warmed her and made her feel less lonely. She and Toto ate the last of the bread, and now she did not know what they would do for breakfast. "If you wish," asked the lion, "I will go into the forest and kill a deer for you. You can roast it by the fire, since your tastes are so peculiar that you prefer cooked food. Then you will have a very good breakfast." "Oh, don't, please, don't," begged the Tin Woodman. "I shall certainly weep if you killed a poor deer, and then my jaws will rust again." But the lion went away into the forest and found his own supper, and no one ever knew what it was, for he did not mention it. And the Scarecrow found a tree full of nuts and filled Dorothy's basket with them, so that she would not be hungry for a long time. She found this very kind and thoughtful of the Scarecrow, but she laughed heartily at the awkward way in which the poor creature picked up the nuts. His paddled hands were so clumsy, and the nuts were so small that he dropped almost every one of them he put in the basket. But the Scarecrow did not mind how long it took him to fill the basket, for it enabled him to keep him away from the fire, as he feared a spark might get into his straw and burn him up. So he kept a good distance away from the flames, and only came near to cover Dorothy with dry leaves when she sat down to sleep. They kept her very snug and warm, as she slept soundly until morning. When it was daylight, the girl bathed her face in a little rippling brook, and soon after they started towards the Emerald City. This was an eventful day for the travellers. They had been walking an hour when they saw before them a great ditch that crossed the road and divided the forest as far as they could see on either side. It was a very wide ditch, and when they crept up to the edge and looked into it, they could see it was also very deep, and there were many big jagged rocks at the bottom, and the sides were so steep that none of them could climb down. And for a moment it seemed the journey must end. "What shall we do?" asked Dorothy despairingly. "I haven't the faintest idea," said the Tin Woodman. And the lion shook his shaggy mane and looked thoughtful. But the Scarecrow said, "We cannot fly, that is certain. Neither can we climb down this great ditch, therefore, if we cannot jump over it, we must stop where we are." I think I could jump over it," said the Cowardly Lion, after measuring the distance carefully in his mind. "Then we are all right," answered the Scarecrow, "for you can carry us all over on your back, one at a time." "Well, I'll try," said the Lion. "Who will go first?" "I will," declared the Scarecrow. "For if you found that you could not jump over the gulf, Dorothy would have been killed, or the Tin Woodman so badly dented on the rocks below. But if I'm on your back, it will not matter, so much as before will not hurt me." "I am terribly afraid of falling myself," said the Cowardly Lion, "but I suppose there's nothing to do but try at least. So get on my back and we'll make the attempt." The Scarecrow sat upon the lion's back, and the big beast walked towards the edge of the gulf and crouched down. "Why don't you try to run and jump?" asked the Scarecrow. "Because that isn't the way we lions do these things," he replied. And giving a great spring, he shot through the air and landed safely on the other side. They were all greatly pleased to see how easily he did it, and after the Scarecrow had got down from his back, the lion sprang across the ditch again. Dorothy thought she would go next, so she took Toto in her arms and climbed to the lion's back, holding him tightly to his mane with one hand, and the other next moment it seemed they were flying through the air, and before them she had time to think about it. She was safe on the other side. The lion went back for a third time and got the Tin Woodman, and then they were all sat down for a few moments to give the beast a chance for some rest, for all his great leaps has made his breath short, and he panted like a big dog that had been running too long. They found the forest very thick on this side, and it looked dark and gloomy. After the lion had rested, they started along for the yellow brick road, silently wondering, each in his own mind, if ever they would come to the end of the woods and reach a bright sunshine again. To add to their discomfort, they soon heard strange noises in the depth of the forest. The lion whispered to them all, as it was a part of the country that the Calahads lived. "What are the Calahads?" "They're monstrous beasts with bodies like bears and heads like tigers. replied the lion. "And with claws so sharp and long they could tear me in two as easily as I could kill Toto. I'm terribly afraid of the Calihads." "I'm not surprised that you are," returned Dorothy. "You must be dreadful beasts." The lion was about to reply when suddenly there came another gulf across the road. This one was so broad and deep that the lion knew at once he couldn't leap across it. So they sat down to consider what they should do, and after a serious thought, the Scarecrow said, "Here is a great tree standing so close to the ditch. If the Tin Woodman can chop it down so that it will fall to the other side, we can walk across it easily." "That's a first-rate idea," said the lion. "One would almost suspect you had brains in your head instead of straw." The Woodman set to work at once, and so sharply was his axe that the tree soon stopped, chopped right nearly through. Then the lion put his strong legs in front of the tree and pushed it with all his might, and slowly the big tree tipped and fell with a crash across the ditch, with its top branches on the other side. They had almost just started to cross this queer bridge when a sharp growl made them all look up, and to their horror, they saw running towards them with two great beasts with bodies like bears and heads like tigers. The Calihads," said the Cowardly Lion, beginning to tremble. "Quick!" cried the Scarecrow. "Let us cross over." So Dorothy went first, holding Toto in her arms. The Tin Woodman followed, and the Scarecrow came next. The lion, although he was certainly afraid, turned to face the Calihads, and gave such a loud and terrible roar that Dorothy screamed, and the Scarecrow fell over backwards, while even the fierce beast stopped short and looked at him in surprise. But seeing as they were bigger than the lion, and remembering there were two of them and only one of him, the Calihads again rushed forward, and the lion crossed over the tree and turned to see what they would do next. Without stopping an instant, the fierce beast also began to cross the tree. And the lion said to Dorothy, "We are lost, for they'll surely tear us to pieces with their sharp long claws. But stand behind close to me and I will fight as long as I am alive." "Wait a minute," called the Scarecrow. He had been thinking about what was the best to be done, and now he looked at the Woodman to chop the end away of the tree and rested on their side of the ditch. The Tin Woodman began to use his axe once again, and just as the two Calihads were nearly across, the tree fell with a crash into the gulf, carrying the ugly, snarling brutes with it. They were both dashed to pieces on the sharp rocks on the bottom. "Well," said the lion, drawing a long breath of relief, "I see we're going to live to battle a while longer. I'm glad of it, for it must be very uncomfortable not to be alive. Those creatures frightened me so badly that my heart is beating yet." "Ah," said the Tin Woodman sadly, "I wish I had a heart to beat." This adventure made the travellers more anxious than ever to get out of the forest, and they walked so fast that Dorothy became tired and had to ride on the lion's back. To their great joy, the trees had become thinner and farther as they advanced, and in the afternoon they suddenly came upon a broad river flowing swiftly just before them. On the other side of the water they could see the yellow brick road running through a beautiful country, with green meadows dotted through bright flowers, and all the road bordered with trees hanging full of delicious fruits. They were greatly pleased to see this delightful country before them. "How shall we cross the river?" asked Dorothy. "Well, it's more easily done," replied the Scarecrow. "The Tin Woodman must build us a raft so we can float to the other side." So the Woodman took out his axe and began to chop down small trees to make a raft. And while he was busy at this, the Scarecrow found on the riverbank a tree full of fine fruit. This pleased Dorothy, who had eaten nothing but nuts all day, and she made a hearty meal of the ripe fruit. But it takes time to make a raft, even when one is as industrious as the untiring as the Tin Woodman. And when night came, the work was not done. So they found a cozy place under the trees and they slept until the morning. And Dorothy dreamed of the Emerald City and of the good Wizard of Oz, who would send her back to her home again.